Hey everyone, welcome back to another Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today. We're going to take an incredibly deep, impartial dive into a really fascinating theological framework. It's based on this stark dichotomy presented in ancient biblical texts. Specifically, we're looking at Psalm 1, which serves as kind of the foundational blueprint for the Torah-observant believer. It establishes this uncompromising boundary line between two very, very distinct ways of living. So let's just dive right into this and see how this ancient text sets up its argument.
Okay, here's a quick roadmap for today's Explainer. We're going to start with the blueprint of separation. Then we'll move into delighting in Yahweh's instruction. After that, we'll examine the contrasting metaphors of the unshakable fruitful tree and the weightless illusory chaff. Then we'll look at the concept of the day of judgment and finally wrap it all up with two destinies, one choice.
All right, Section 1, the blueprint of separation.
So in this framework, true covenant blessing actually begins with setting some really clear boundary lines and, frankly, avoiding worldly compromise. It's kind of fascinating, right? Because it starts not with what you should do, but what you need to avoid. The text opens up exactly like this. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. Now that Hebrew concept for blessed is ashri, which implies a state of being deeply content and set on the right track. But notice how it immediately initiates a warning against a dangerous downward progression of behavior.
You can really see the slow fade of this downward progression. Step 1 is walking in the counsel of the ungodly. This implies momentum, taking advice from outside the text standard. If you walk long enough, you eventually slow down to step 2, standing in the path of sinners. That's taking a comfortable position in an environment of disobedience. And finally, step 3, sitting in the seat of the scornful. To sit means assuming a position of authority, actively opposing Yahweh's truth. It's literally a progressive slide from casual influence to active mockery.
Moving on to Section 2, delighting in Yahweh's instruction.
So if the first pillar is all about avoidance, this second pillar points out that righteousness is really about what a believer actively runs toward with joy. The scripture outlines this stark contrast verbatim, but his delight is in the Torah of Yahweh, and in his Torah he meditates day and night. The righteous person rejects the voice of the mockers because, well, their ears are entirely tuned to a completely different frequency.
To really grasp this, we've got to do a quick lexical deep dive. For centuries, the Western paradigm has translated Torah merely as law. But literally, it means instruction, teaching, or direction. It actually comes from the root word yara, which means to shoot an arrow and hit the bullseye. So the absolute crucial point here is that the author views these commandments not as some heavy mechanical burden, but as loving direction meant to hit the mark of a clean, harmonious life.
And how exactly do they interact with this instruction? Through Haga. This is the biblical word for meditation. But wait, unlike Eastern meditation, which asks you to empty your mind, Haga means to murmur, mutter, or ponder. It is a practice of actively filling your mind. You're continuously speaking the scriptures quietly to yourself to extract spiritual nourishment, basically filtering all of reality through this specific framework.
This practice, it is heavily reinforced in the ancient texts. Take Joshua 1:8, for example. It commands, "This book of the Torah shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it." It's that constant, muttering meditation that the text claims leads to true covenantal success.
All right, Section 3, the unshakable, fruitful tree.
Now we shift into this incredibly vivid agricultural imagery to describe the organic transformation of a person whose life is just saturated in this instruction. The text paints the picture exactly like this. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Reading that, it allows us to really visualize the profound stability and resilience they're talking about in the source text.
But actually, there is a hidden depth here in the Hebrew word shatul. In English, it's translated as planted, but it much more accurately means transplanted. It paints this amazing picture of being uprooted from a wild, barren desert and intentionally relocated to a place of deliberate, artificial irrigation. We're talking channels of living water dug by a master gardener. This unshakable life isn't just some natural occurrence, it's a highly intentional relocation.
We actually see a really powerful prophetic echo of this in Jeremiah 17:7-8. It says verbatim, "Blessed is the man who trusts in Yahweh, and whose hope is Yahweh. For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which spreads out its roots by the river, and will not fear when heat comes, but its leaf will be green, and will not be anxious in the year of drought, nor will cease from yielding fruit. I mean, that just brilliantly illustrates how this deep-rooted vitality sustains a person even during severe seasons of external drought.
Which brings us to section 4, the weightless, illusory chaff. Okay, so now we hit a dramatic shift in this expository dichotomy. We are moving from the deep stability of the righteous to the ultimate fragility of the ungodly. To really get the next part of the blueprint, you have to understand ancient agriculture. Threshing floors were built up on hills to catch the breeze, right? The farmer would take a winnowing fork and throw the crushed grain high into the air. The heavy, valuable grain would fall straight down. But the chaff, that protective, papery outer casing, it was caught by the evening wind and blown entirely away.
Keeping that vivid image in your head, listen to the very next verse in the blueprint. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Honestly, it's a stark, almost terrifying vulnerability assigned to those who lack spiritual substance. Let's just compare them directly. The tree versus the chaff. The tree is heavy, rooted, and fed by living water. The chaff is weightless, hollow, and blown away by the wind. Human philosophies or empires might look super successful to the human eye, but the text argues they lack the kavod, the weighty structural integrity of eternal truth. When the winds of trial blow, they just scatter.
Section 5, the day of judgment.
You see, this entire theological framework is pointing toward an unavoidable day of legal reckoning. The text reads, "Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous." Because the chaff is completely weightless, it possesses absolutely no structural integrity to endure the ultimate investigation by the King of the universe. To stand here is actually a legal term for being acquitted. The text asserts that without the weight of the Torah, one simply cannot stand in that day.
And finally, Section 6, 2 destinies, 1 choice. This is where we look at the ultimate summary statement that officially seals the fates of these 2 distinct paths. The concluding verse perfectly encapsulates everything we've been exploring. It reads, "For Yahweh knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish."
Notice the word knows there. In Hebrew, this is yada. Now, this isn't just cognitive awareness or collecting intellectual data. It means a deep, intimate, covenantal relationship and protective love. Yahweh intimately guards the steps of the righteous. In complete contrast, the text says the path of the ungodly perishes. It literally evaporates into nothingness, leaving no legacy, no foundation. This ancient blueprint leaves absolutely zero middle ground. It summarizes the uncompromising choice presented by the entire Torah framework. As Moses famously declared in Deuteronomy 30:15-16, "See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil, in that I command you today to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, his statutes, and his judgments, that you may live and multiply."
We've unpacked a lot today. The slow fate of the mockers, the deep roots of the transplanted tree, the weightless illusion of the chaff, and the ultimate destination of both. It is a profoundly visual and spiritual blueprint. So I'll leave you with this one question to really ponder. Based on the criteria of this ancient text, which of the 2 paths are you currently walking today? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep seeking understanding, and I'll catch you next time.